Okay, so you're here because you really want to get to the bottom of things, right? You want the real story. You want the knowledge. You don't want to wade through all the extra stuff.
That's it. That's exactly what we aim for, to cut through the noise and bring you the key insights.
And today, we're tackling a topic. Well, it's heavy. It's the 1955 Le Mans disaster. It's the worst crash in motorsport history,
Yeah.
still to this day.
Huh.
And we really want to understand what happened. Not just, what happened on the surface, but like the chain of events. How did this happen? And what changed because of it?
Right. This wasn't just a racing accident. It was a pivotal moment that reshaped the entire sport. So we dug into a lot of sources: eyewitness accounts, historical reports, investigations. It's a lot to unpack, but the story it tells is crucial.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So picture this. It's June 1955, the 24 hours of Le Mans. The atmosphere is electric. You've got these huge names in racing. You've got Ferrari. They were the defending champs, known for being crazy fast, but sometimes, not always finishing the race.
Right. They definitely had the speed, but
Yeah.
could they keep it up for a full 24 hours? That was always the question with Ferrari.
And then you have Jaguar. Now, Le Mans, this was their thing. This was what they were all about. Their whole racing program was built around winning this race.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this driver, Mike Hawthorne, a super talented guy competing in Formula One at the same time. That's serious dedication.
Oh, yeah. Having Hawthorne on the team definitely added to the drama. He was a fierce competitor, and that made the rivalry even more intense.
Then you've got Mercedes-Benz. Now, they were fresh off a bunch of big wins, in the World Sports Car Championship. And their car, the 300 SLR, this thing was a masterpiece. Sterling Moss even set a record in it at the Mille Miglia. I mean, it was so innovative, incredibly lightweight body. They called the alloy Electron, magnesium alloy. And this is important. They used inboard drum brakes, which were common back then.
Yeah.
And they had this huge air brake that came up behind the driver.
Yeah, very different from Jaguar, who had these advanced disc brakes.
Exactly. And, just for everyone listening, disc brakes are what we have in cars today. They squeeze pads against a rotor, which creates friction and stops the car way faster, much better than those old drum brakes, especially when you're braking hard over and over.
And as we'll see, that difference in braking technology played a big part in what happened.
Now, heading the Mercedes team, you had Alfred Neubauer. This
Yeah.
guy was legendary. He put together this all-star team of drivers. Fangio, Sterling Moss. These guys were icons. And you had Carl Kling. He'd won Le Mans back in '52. He was paired with Andre Simon. And then John Fitch and Pierre Levey, the American duo, and Levey. He had this amazing history of Le Mans. Back in '52, he almost single-handedly won it for Mercedes. An incredible drive, just fell short in the final hour.
Yeah, his performance in '52 was something else. It really showed his determination and how much Mercedes wanted to win Le Mans. It set the stage for what was to come.
So let's talk about the track. Circuit de la Sarthe. Now, back then, parts of it hadn't changed that much from, like, the 1920s, when the fastest cars were doing maybe 100 kilometers per hour. But by '55, these cars were flying over 270 kilometers per hour. I mean, it's a huge difference.
And that's where things get a bit scary. The cars were evolving so rapidly, but the safety measures on these tracks, they were lagging behind.
Yeah, they did some resurfacing. They widened some parts after the war. But the basic layout, and most importantly, the safety features, they were still pretty basic. No barriers separating the pits from the track. Just a 4-foot dirt bank for the spectators. And get this, no seat belts in the cars. Back then, the thinking was that if you crashed, you were better off being thrown clear. Can you imagine that today?
It's a different world. It really highlights how much our understanding of safety has changed. Back then, it was all about the driver's skill and accepting the risk.
Okay, so the race starts. It's 4 in the afternoon. And right off the bat, it's intense. Castellotti in the Ferrari, Hawthorne in the Jaguar, Fangio in the Mercedes, they're all going at it, breaking lap records left and right. It's a crazy battle.
Yeah.
The other cars from their teams are being a bit more cautious, pacing themselves.
Right, a 24-hour race is all about strategy. You can't just go flat out the whole time.
Then it's 6:26 p.m. The leaders are finishing lap 35. They're coming up on the first pit stops.
Yeah.
And that's when everything went wrong. It's like a perfect storm of factors all colliding at once.
A tragic chain of events, high speeds, the track design, and a series of decisions all happening in a split second.
Okay, so let's break it down. Hawthorne, he's just past Levey, and he's closing in on Lance Macklin, who's in an Austin Healey. Hawthorne's team signals for him to pit at the end of the lap. So he passes Macklin, moves to the right, getting ready to pit, and then slams on the brakes. Those Jaguar disc brakes, they really stopped him fast.
And Macklin, right behind him, he's caught completely off guard.
Totally. He slams on his brakes, swerves right, goes off the track, onto the dirt, kicks up a huge cloud of dust, and then he swerves back left. Now, there's a few theories about why he swerved left. Maybe it was instinctive, maybe he lost control on the dirt, maybe that disc brakes on the Austin Healey acted up a little. We don't know for sure. But that swerve put him right in the path of Levet's Mercedes. And Levet was coming up fast, about to lap Macklin again, going over 200 kilometers per hour.
It was a recipe for disaster. At that speed, there's almost no time to react.
No time at all. Levet's Mercedes slams into the back of Macklin's car. People who saw it, and later analysis, they all say the Austin Healey basically acted like a ramp. It launched the Mercedes straight up into the air. There are even reports that Levet, as his car was going up, raised his hand, maybe a warning to Fangio, who was right behind him in the other Mercedes, and that might have saved Fangio's life. He somehow managed to thread the needle through all the chaos, even clipped Hawthorne's Jaguar as he went by.
Fangio was one of the greatest drivers ever. His ability to react in that situation was incredible. But tragically, Levet wasn't so lucky.
No, he wasn't. His car went flying over that little dirt bank, right into the crowd, at over 200 kilometers an hour. Hit the spectators at least twice. The force was so great the Mercedes completely disintegrated. Levet was thrown from the car, died instantly. It was horrific. And all those pieces of the car, the engine, the suspension, even the hood, they were all flung into the crowd. They say the hood was like a guillotine. People were standing on ladders, scaffolding, anything to get a better view. It was just awful.
It's hard to even comprehend the chaos and the sheer terror of that moment. The lack of proper barriers was devastating.
Jaguar driver Duncan Hamilton, he was standing in the pit wall, right? He said the scene across the track was indescribable. Just death and suffering everywhere. Screams. He couldn't even process it. And, it didn't stop there. Levet's car landed on the embankment, the fuel tank ruptured, and the whole thing exploded. The magnesium body, that electron stuff, it burned incredibly hot, white hot. And then when the firefighters tried to put it out with water, it made it worse. Magnesium reacts violently with water. It burned for hours. Just a horrible sight.
It's a grim reminder of how even the most basic firefighting methods can be completely ineffective, even dangerous in certain situations.
Meanwhile, Macklin's car is bouncing off everything. Hits the left barrier, spins across the track, straight into the pit lane. Almost takes out a bunch of cars that are refueling. Carl Kling's Mercedes, a Maserati, another Jaguar. Crashes into the pit wall, barely misses the Cunningham and Mercedes pit crews, but still injures a policeman, a photographer, 2 officials. Bounces back across the track, and somehow Macklin walks away from it, not a scratch on him.
Incredible. Talk about a lucky escape. It shows how unpredictable these crashes can be.
Right. And Hawthorne, well, he missed his pit entry with everything going on. His team waved him around to do another lap, get him away from the mess. When he finally pitted, he was a wreck. He thought he'd caused the whole thing. Couldn't even continue driving. Buev and Duas, his teammates, they had to take over.
It's hard to imagine the psychological toll that took on the drivers. To witness something like that, it must have been incredibly traumatic.
And John Fitch, Levet's co-driver, he was standing there ready to take over with Levet's wife, Denise Bouillon. They saw the whole thing happen. They said Levet's body was just lying there burned until someone finally covered it with a banner. Fitch stayed with Denise. She was just devastated, and he knew right away that this was going to be big news and probably a lot of misinformation would get out. So he called his family to let them know he was okay, and then he went to the media center and overheard a reporter saying there were already 48 confirmed dead. That's when the scale of it really hit him.
Fitch's perspective is particularly haunting. He was right there, about to get in the car, and then suddenly he's facing this unimaginable tragedy.
And he knew something had to be done. He went straight to the Mercedes team and told them to withdraw. Said there was no way they could keep racing after this. It would be a PR disaster no matter what. Now, Alfred Neubauer, the team manager, he agreed, but he couldn't make that call on his own.
Right. Neubauer would have understood the implications immediately. It was a moral dilemma as much as a logistical one.
And this is where it gets controversial. They didn't stop the race. The race director, Charles Theroux, later on he gave a few reasons why. Said if they'd evacuated all the spectators, it would have blocked the emergency services. Talked about lawsuits from the manufacturers. Even said that, according to tradition, the race should continue. He said he didn't even have the authority to stop it, that the local prefect had to make that call.
It seems incredible now, doesn't it, that they would keep racing after something like that. But it really shows how different things were back then.
Eventually, Neubauer got permission from Mercedes HQ to withdraw. This was around midnight. They waited till most of the spectators had left, about 1:45 in the morning, and then they quietly pulled their cars in. They were running first and third at the time. Just a brief announcement, and by the next morning, the Mercedes team was gone. Rudolf Uhlenhaut, the head of their racing program, he even went over to the Jaguar team and suggested they withdraw too, out of respect. But Jaguar refused.
It really shows the contrast between those two teams. Mercedes understood the gravity of the situation. Jaguar, they just wanted to win.
So with Mercedes and Ferrari out, it was just Jaguar against the rest. Hawthorne and his team, they kept going, ended up winning by 5 laps. But there wasn't any celebration, understandably. There's this famous photo, though, of Hawthorne on the podium, smiling, drinking champagne. A French magazine published it with this sarcastic caption, something like, "Cheers, Mr. Hawthorne." It didn't go down well.
That image really captured the public's anger and the complex emotions surrounding Hawthorne's role in the disaster.
The final death toll was just horrifying. 83 spectators, plus Levet. Over 120 injured. Some sources say closer to 180. It's still the deadliest crash in racing history. They held a special mass for the victims, and the impact was immediate. France, Spain, Switzerland, West Germany, a bunch of other countries, they all banned motor racing until they could figure out how to make it safer. In the U.S., the AAA, the main racing organization, they basically disbanded their racing division. A new group, USAC, was formed to take over.
Yeah, the whole sport was shaken to its core. It was a wake-up call that couldn't be ignored.
Most of the bans were lifted after about a year, once new safety rules were in place. But Switzerland, they kept their ban on circuit racing until 2022. Can you believe that? Though they did allow electric racing earlier, a bunch of other big races were also canceled. The Nürburgring race, the Carrera Panamericana.
Wow, Switzerland's ban really shows how seriously some countries took the issue of safety after Le Mans.
Now, here's a weird twist. Even though Le Mans was a disaster for Mercedes, they actually won the last 2 races of the season, took the world championship, and then they pulled out of racing altogether. Although some people say they'd already decided to do that before Le Mans. But anyway, a bunch of drivers retired after that. John Fitch, Phil Walters, Sherwood Johnston. And Lance Macklin, sadly, he was killed in another racing crash later that year. Fangio, he never raced at Le Mans again. And the grandstands at Le Mans, the ones where most of the people died, they were torn down and rebuilt with better safety.
It's a complicated situation. Mercedes achieving success despite the tragedy, then withdrawing. It suggests their decision to leave was influenced by many factors, not just Le Mans.
But the big question remains, who was to blame? A lot of fingers were pointed at Mike Hawthorne. They said his sudden move and braking caused the whole thing. That was Mercedes' view, and Macklin's too. But Jaguar defended Hawthorne. They said Macklin and Levet weren't experienced enough to be racing at that level. The initial reports were all over the place, but then a guy named Paul Frere, he was a driver who actually finished second in the race, he looked at all the photos and figured out what really happened, corrected some of those early mistakes.
Yeah, Frere's analysis was crucial. He provided a much clearer picture of the events leading up to the crash, based on evidence, not speculation.
And then there was the fire. Some people thought Mercedes was using some crazy fuel additive that made it burn so hot. But it turned out it was the magnesium chassis. The magnesium burns really intensely, and when you throw water on it, it gets even worse. The French authorities even tested the fuel to prove it wasn't some special mix.
It's a tragic reminder that sometimes the materials we use, even for good reasons like weight reduction, can have unforeseen and dangerous consequences.
The drivers themselves, even they couldn't agree on who was at fault. Macklin and Fitch, they blamed Hawthorne. But Mike Dewis, Hawthorne's teammate, he said Macklin overreacted and that Levet wasn't up to the task. Jaguar and Mercedes both released statements basically defending their own drivers. Neubauer, the Mercedes team manager, he focused on how to make the pit lane safer.
That lack of agreement, even among the people who were there, shows just how chaotic it was and how difficult it is to assign blame in these high-speed situations.
Macklin, he was really upset by what Hawthorne wrote in his autobiography later on. Hawthorne basically said he wasn't to blame without actually saying who was. So Macklin sued him for libel. Sadly, it never went to court. Hawthorne died in a car crash in 1959. Ironically, he was trying to overtake a Mercedes in his Jaguar when it happened.
It's a tragic postscript to the whole affair, so much unresolved.
The official inquiry, in the end, they said no one driver was to blame. They called it a racing incident. But they did say the track wasn't safe enough. Apparently, some drivers had complained about the pit straight years earlier, but nothing was done.
Right. So while the driver's actions triggered the crash, the inadequate safety features of the track amplified the consequences, especially for the spectators.
After the disaster, the ACO, the guys who run Le Mans, They made a lot of changes to the track, widened the pit straight, got rid of a little kink in the track, added a slow-down lane for the pits, rebuilt the grandstands with barriers and stuff to protect the spectators. But safety in racing, it didn't really change overnight. It wasn't until the 60s, when Jackie Stewart started campaigning for better safety, that things really started to improve, especially after some other drivers like Bandini and Clark were killed.
It took those further tragedies and the efforts of people like Stewart to make safety a top priority in motorsport.
And John Fitch, Levesque's co-driver, remember him? He became a big advocate for safety, both on the track and on the roads. He even invented those safety barrels you see on highways. You know, the ones filled with sand, they're called Fitch barrels. They absorb the impact if you hit them. He made a real difference.
It's inspiring to see how he turned that tragedy into something positive. He saved countless lives with his work.
Even Macklin's car, the Austin Healey. It has this interesting story. It was sold a few times, ended up in a barn somewhere. Then in 2011, it was auctioned off for over £800,000. Someone restored it to its original racing livery.
It's a strange sort of legacy for a car that was at the center of such a horrific event.
And Mercedes, they stayed out of racing until the mid-'80s. They eventually came back, won Le Mans in 1989 with Sauber, raced through the 90s, and then pulled out again in 99 after a few more crashes. Thankfully, no one died in those ones.
It seems like Mercedes has always had this complicated relationship with motorsport. They've achieved so much, but they've also seen the dark side of racing. The lessons of Le Mans have never been far from their minds.
So when you think about it, the 1955 Le Mans disaster, it was this terrible mix of things. Fast cars, a track that wasn't up to the job, and a series of decisions that led to this awful loss of life. It changed motorsport forever, made everyone realize how important safety is.
Absolutely. It forced the sport to confront the dangers, not just for the drivers, but for everyone involved.
And it's amazing to see how much has changed since then. The safety improvements, not just in racing, but on the roads too. It makes you wonder, what other events, maybe ones we don't even think about much, have had a similar impact on our lives? What tragedies have led to the safety rules we take for granted today? It's a question worth thinking about.
It really is. The 1955 Le Mans disaster is a reminder that even in the pursuit of speed and competition, safety has to come first. And the lessons learned that day continue to shape the world we live in.
I think that's a good place to leave it for today. Thanks for listening. And if you want to learn more about the 1955 Le Mans disaster, there's a ton of information out there. It's a story that deserves to be remembered, and the lessons learned, they're more relevant than ever.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.